the 7600D, which is a JDM special. I showed it on yesterday's video. So we compare the thickness of that. This is actually probably one of the smallest G-Shocks there are. Wears really, really well on your wrist. And I forgot to mention, my wrist is 7 inches. We'll put it against the blue Pelagos with the in-house movement. So this one is generally known as being slightly thicker than the two-liner, which I have here. So the two-liner has the ETA movement. Really nice texture on the dial. Again, similar sort of texture to the Black Bay Pro, but the Black Bay Pro has a bit more brown sort of in there, a bit more of a sunburst look. I'll just repeat that again just so you can see. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely got more of an aged kind of look on the dial. It's black, but it's got some sort of warm black. Is there such a thing? I don't know. And then the last watch we're going to compare it to today, very, very popular watch amongst the watch collecting community. It's the SBDX001, or the Marine Master 300, MM300. This is on a strap code, no, sorry, not strap code, this is on a Crafter Blue vulcanized rubber strap that I bought from Strap Code. I think actually I bought from Crafter Blue years ago. I've had this watch for about 7 years now, and it's quite chunky, but it wears very well on the wrist. It's a chunky piece. Yeah, it's chunky, that's all I can say. Quite a top heavy piece, but I think of all the straps I have for it, the one that sort of balances it out the most is this Crafter Blue rubber strap that sort of has curved ends, which fits this watch very well. Probably one of my, I really recommend getting one of these straps if you have this piece, as it is quite top heavy and does weigh a bit. So let's get the comparisons in. So I'll put the Pro on my wrist. I have a 7-inch wrist, as I mentioned. The funny thing I honestly think with this watch is, despite the measurements, despite the figures, it wears really well. It doesn't feel like it is sticking out, or like it's just sat on it sits on your wrist quite well. I think particularly with the sort of curvature of the slab, it does a good job. And the other thing is, because you've got the adjustable kind of clasp, it would make it very comfortable to wear on a day-to-day. My wrist literally fluctuates all the time, which is why I have a big preference to watches with an adjustable clasp, like the MM300 and the Pelagoses. Just makes life so much easier. I have other watches as well where I've put the sort of clasps on there, like my Orient Komatsu, which has got a strap code bracelet with the adjustable clasp. So here you go. Wears well. I'll try to give you more of a wrist shot with it. Not sure if you can see that properly. It's a bit tricky to do this on a camera. Okay. Alright, we'll put the calipers on. We'll put them onto 0. So I have put some sort of plastic on there, because these are quite sharp, these calipers. And what we don't want to do is scratch any of the watches, which is very easily done. Okay, so I'm getting a figure around the 14mm. I'm pushing a bit hard on it. Oops, hang on. I'm getting a reading of about 14.5mm thick, which would sound, it would suggest it's very, very thick and worrying, but to be honest, because of the 39mm size of it, it hides it quite well. And also, as I mentioned, the bottom is quite curved, the bottom of the case, so it does sit quite well on the wrist. Let's compare that to a few others now. So the G2000, the MRG, I don't know if you can see it there, that's coming in at a hefty 17mm. The other thing is, I mean, I am used to slightly thicker watches. Generally, I mean, the BB58 is the slimmest watch I have. Automatic, that one, or perhaps one of my El Primeros, the old rainbow flybacks, which I'll do a video on. They are the slimmest of the slim. But this MRG, this is a beast. This watch, I mean, I find it really big, even for my wrist. As you can see, it's humongous, sticks out. But it's one of those things, I do like it. The finishing, the colours, it's very well executed, but even the strap, I mean, the quality, it's a beast. But, you know, watch collecting, it's all individual. If you like something, you like something. We're not really here to judge others and their taste, but this is definitely a big piece. Very, very big watch. Now we've got my MM300, which definitely sits top heavy. This is a top heavy kind of watch. And the funny thing is, it's about the same. But no way on earth does that. Wow, this is shocking. I can't believe it. No way on earth does this Marine Master feel or wear the same as the Black Bay. I cannot honestly tell you that it's that thick. I think there must be something wrong. I don't know, but Tudor have done one hell of a job in disguising the thickness of the Black Bay Pro, because I can't believe it. I'm actually shocked. I'll put this on. The MM fits well on my wrist, but it's a big boy. It's quite thick. I mean, through the case design, it has presence. This has a lot of presence. The MM300. I would no way have ever assumed this. I can't believe this doesn't make sense. That the Black Bay Pro is the same thickness as the MM300. That is impossible. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Absolutely does not make any sense. I'll put them on my wrist side by side. There you go. I think this explains it. You can see the Marine Master. It almost looks like it juts out more. But then when you sort of see the dome crystal on the Black Bay Pro, it's almost the same, yeah, but it does not at all. It does not wear as thick as the MM. This is very strange. I don't know how, but they have disguised it, because no way when you put this on does it feel as block-like or as thick as a Marine Master 300. I don't know, I think Tudor have done a very good job at disguising this. This is very, very strange. I think there's a direct comparison there. The actual Tudor sits lower on the wrist than the Marine Master. It definitely sits lower. Yeah, sits a lot lower. And the actual watch sort of finishes here. Or I should say the top of the bezel finishes here, a lot lower than the top of the bezel on the Marine Master. So I'd say, I think to explain it, the Black Bay Pro sits very well on the wrist, whereas the MM sits on the wrist. So it's plonked on it, as opposed to the Black Bay Pro that sort of sits very well on it. That's how I had to explain it. It's not, it sort of flows around your wrist. Whereas another watch, any other watch that is say 14.5mm thick, depending on the design, might just sit plonked on it. That could be part of this mystery explained. Okay, so the Pelagos with the in-house movement, the blue dial, is coming in at 14.2mm thick. Let's put that on side by side with the Black Bay Pro. There you go. So the blue Pelagos has the in-house movement, and it's generally known to be slightly thicker than the ETA version. The Black Bay Pro is sitting lower, and it's actually on a rather fatter part of my, rather thicker or fatter part of my wrist, so it should actually be higher. But it sort of sits a bit lower than the Pelagos, or very similar. And the Pelagos doesn't really feel too thick. Okay, yes, it's a dive watch, it's a professional piece, 500 meters in terms of water resistance depth, but it never feels as top heavy or chunky as, say, the Marine Master, for example. So there you go, that's them side by side. And here you go, side by side with the ETA Pelagos now, which is officially around about 1mm to 1.5mm thicker than the in-house movement one. And whilst it technically does wear lower, does sit a bit lower, because of the width of the watch, again, the Black Bay Pro looks smaller and does not feel as big. And the two-liner is coming in at about 13.7mm thick. There you go. In direct comparison with the original Black Bay 58, yes, it is thicker. But in all fairness, the original Black Bay 58 is super slim. Almost too slim, which shows Tudor did a wonderful job with it. Okay, so it does look thicker, but honestly, if your wrist is, how do I say, honestly, 6.5 inches or bigger, you'd be absolutely fine with the Black Bay Pro. If your wrist is smaller, I'm not too sure, you want to try it on. Again, this Black Bay Pro is fitted with the bracelet. I think if you start putting it on NATOs, you would notice quite a difference because of the thickness, whereas the Black Bay 58 would sit perfectly well with a NATO due to it being really slim. I think you would notice a bit of a difference or a lopsidedness with the Black Bay Pro in comparison to a 58 on a NATO. And the last one I'm going to compare it to is the G-Shock MRG 7600. Okay, so the MRG is coming in very, very close at 14, nearly 14.5mm thick, which is actually quite thin for a G-Shock. That isn't a square, about 14.5. And you can see, I mean, I find that the 7600 fits really, really well on my wrist, even though it's 14.5mm thick. Because of the size of the watch, it's quite small for a G-Shock. I'll measure it, the width of it, in a second. It's not a 50mm or a 48, I think it's about 44, 45mm, which is perfect sort of size. It's actually really good for an everyday piece. But now, as you can see, the Black Bay Pro is technically the same to, if not thicker, but it looks thinner. It sits a lot better on the wrist. But the MRG, I find, also fits really well, and I'm really happy with this. I do love the MRG. It's a perfect sort of daily piece. Let's measure how wide the MRG is again. Right, the MRG is quite hard to measure. It's about 45 mil thick, but that's really at the widest point. I think it sort of wears almost like a 43. This is a good watch if you like smaller pieces and you have a smaller wrist. I recommend, and you want to wear a G and not, and you want it to look nice on your wrist. Definitely, this is a piece to get. Fits really, really nice on normal sized wrists. I mean, if you have a 6-inch wrist, you can pull this off 100%. So, to summarise, Tudor have done a very good job in hiding the thickness of it. Sits really well on the wrist. A lot of the YouTubers have mentioned how thick it is, and yeah, it's not. I mean, on paper, it's definitely a talking point. It's gonna get people talking, 100%, because this is a thick watch. On paper, this is the same thickness as the Marine Master, which is a big boy. It's not a big boy, but this has major presence on your wrist. But the Black Bay Pro just sits on it nicely. Does a really good job. And yes, I mean, you have got the functionality of the GMT. You've got the date complication on there as well. I'm pretty sure the reason why it is slightly thicker is that they're modular. There'd be modules placed onto the standard movement, hence why it's a bit thicker. But Tudor have done a great job of disguising the thickness. A lot of the YouTubers, as I've mentioned, are putting videos about how thick it is. To be honest, it wears really well. You wouldn't, I mean, providing you've got a medium to okay sized wrist, you should be perfectly fine. You'd really enjoy this watch. Completely different dynamic to the original Black Bay 58. It's a funny one. You could actually have both in your collection. I thought you could only really have one, but in theory you could. There's no excuse. You could actually have both. They are quite different in how they wear and the character. Even though they're related in the same size, they do wear. They're two quite different watches. And what we'll try and do now is a Loom Shots with the Black Bay 58, the Pro, a Marine Master, and I'll bring a Pelagos in there. As the Pelagoses have loom that is definitely got the best loom in the business. Right. Okay, here we are. A Loom Shot. So you've got the awesome blue loom on the Pelagos. Really, really bright. I'd say, looking at it, both Black Bays have a similar level of brightness. The SBDX001 7 years old, this one, is actually brighter than the BB58 and the Pro, but definitely it doesn't have, it's not as bright as the Pelagos. The only real sort of loom test is to do a longer exposed one where you can see which one sort of degrades faster. But I hope that helps. Okay guys, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. I hope it helps, just to give you an idea of what the watch is really like. A few more videos. I've got so much more content to come. If you want to see a particular review of any of these, let me know. Or a side-by-side comparison with the Pelagoses, or the Pelagos versus the Marine Master. I can do one of those. I mean, I own the watches. I've owned them for years, so I can tell you what it's like day to day living with them. Again, I'm not a diver, so I can give you plenty of first-hand desk diving experience. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helps.